Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ken Bloemer from the University of Dayton. I see many friendly faces out there. And my colleague, Jonathan Weaver from University of Detroit Mercy. I have to begin by apologizing to Jonathan because I'm one of these people that works up to the last minute on their presentations. So I just sent it to him an hour ago, and he's been working up until the last 15 minutes. So I don't know that he's seen anything that I'm about ready to present. So Jonathan, feel free, please, to jump in at any point. So if you saw my email from this morning, what I believe I'm going to do is give you a little background on what we're doing. I'm going to walk you through a case. We're not going to go through the whole case because that would take too long. And then we're going to talk about, what we mean by a finder's fee and what we're hoping to get your help. And then we'll talk about the elements of what makes a good story for a case study. And then we're going to open it up for discussion. And my goal is definitely to be have you done in 45 minutes. We're a little biased, but we think there's a lot of advantages to using case studies for engineering education. And the first, and I'm sure everyone would agree with this, is that, real world engineering out in industry and whatnot, there's many critical success factors beyond just, the technical engineering aspects, for example, how to formulate that problem. What's the opportunity or what's the problem? And are we working on the right problem? Market factors, economic factors, intellectual property issues, supply and distribution. One of the cases that I'm going to briefly mention later, the design was dictated by the supply of materials and the time frame. People issues are everywhere. We're not going to get a lot into people issues, but those certainly have a lot of issues. Marketing and communications, the whole ball of wax. So cases are much more realistic for our future engineers to be looking at. Second point, cases with compelling stories, they really increase student engagement, that you can see them perk up their attention and their motivation, which in turn enhances their learning. Cases offer seamless integration. If I don't know of a better mechanism to seamlessly integrate entrepreneurially minded learning with technical content, because it just works beautifully. Cases, the way that Jonathan is the mastermind here of cases. He has a whole bunch of cases, which we are happy to share with you. But we're working them out so that they require very minimal prep for faculty. They're easily adaptable. If you want to take something out or add something in, they're kind of plug and play. And they're designed pretty much to fit into a regular class period. And we believe that with significant exposure, with enough exposure to cases, I think we're producing more success-oriented, business-ready students. Jonathan, would you care to add anything to that?
Sorry, Ken, I was on mute for a second there, but no, it's great coverage. Yeah, I don't have anything to embellish. We can see if anybody has questions, but I think that's great.
Okay. Yes, if anyone has questions, because I can only see my PowerPoint, I don't have my other screen to see everyone's faces. Just unmute and jump right in. But there'll certainly be time at the end. So the one disadvantage, and I don't really consider it a disadvantage because I think there's value in cases, but the primary disadvantage is it does take longer. So most faculty that we've spoken with, they wouldn't want to teach their whole course via cases because cases do take longer. But just like some faculty love to teach their whole course with project-based learning, project-based learning takes longer, but it's a richer learning experience, like Olin has demonstrated for sure. But the cases do take longer, so I guess there's a balance in there. Let's take a look at a case Jonathan and I recently completed. It's a mechanics example of force. So, we could use the ubiquitous block on a plane. And don't get me wrong, there's a block on a plane is a great example. It's easy to visualize. We can do free body diagrams and whatnot. But we recently came across this invention of the Mighty Mug. And these things, I have a whole box of them here in my office, but these things are really cool. It's supposed to be the unspillable mug. And so it's a cool story, and we can also do free body diagrams of something physical that we give faculty to put it in the classroom. And let me show you what the Mighty Mug looks like. So this is a guy named Lou, who's he's like a YouTube sensation for product testing. So I'm going to show you a brief video. I'm going
What's up, guys? Lou here, back with another video, and today I've got something unusual for you, but I think
I'm going to speed through this because he's going to open the box and he's talking about the claim. How could this be, et cetera, et cetera. So he pulls out the Mighty Mug, but he's very entertaining, as you'll see in just a moment. And he's going to open it up and he pours in a Coke, and I'll stop it right about here. He's starting to play with it.
but it ain't gonna go. What if I, woo! Got me feeling a little nilly-willy. That's a lot of, do I slap it? Do I slap it? Wow! What? This already. How does everyone not have this? I mean, if you could forget about the splash coming out the top, which you could. Whoa, man, my life has changed. What about picking it up? So let's say I want to take a drink. What? This is like too genius.
So you get the idea there.
What's up, guys? Lou here.
Oh, sorry. You get the idea. So again, I hope that sparks your curiosity a little bit about, wow, how does this thing work? And so of course, we're going to bring in the 3 C's, and the challenge for students is to look for the 3 C's throughout the case. Where does your curiosity peak? Where do you see connections? And where do you see any value in this? Where's the value creation aspects? And so we meet the inventor, and Harry is a very interesting gentleman. I apologize for some of the video content, and I'm not going to show you all these videos because it would take too long, but Harry is a unique engineer. And the cool thing here is it shows that, engineers don't just have to graduate and go to work for one company and that's it. Because, he's an engineer, he was a commercial pilot for many years, he became an intellectual property lawyer, and most of all, he's an inventor. And so I'm going to, so he's a very interesting character. And so then we have a video clip of him describing what inspired you to invent this thing called the Mighty Mug. And he talks about being in a restaurant with his wife and his toddler. And his toddler keeps knocking over the milk. And finally, they get so frustrated because it was a nice restaurant that they left some money on the table and they just left. But this was his opportunity recognition. Like, there's got to be a better way. There should be an unspillable cup. And so this stays with them for a long period of time. And so this is where Jonathan really helps out the cases in that, okay, so this is something, in my opinion, that's missing in many design steps, where you stop and say, well, am I working on the right problem? And so here we stop and say, so Harry's problem is, or Harry's design statement or problem statement is like, I want a stealth-like device that resists lateral movements while lifting vertically naturally. But there's other problem statements. You could say, I want to design everything on my desktop that's important to be water resistant, or whatever. So there's other problem statements. So there's good learning here as well. So years later, here's Harry again. So he still thinks he's got this unmet need in the back of his mind. And I'll let Harry do this.
I will tell you, and I'll tell all your students that as somebody who has about 30 to 40 patents, I don't even know how many now. A lot of times you'll have an idea and it'll germinate in your head. And if you're a creative kind of guy and you're an inventive kind of guy, it will stay in the back of your head for years. And then as you're walking down the street, something will happen that sort of percolates and then brings you back to your original idea. So it's not like I had an idea that I wanted to invent this. I went home and invented it. I thought about it when he was like 3 years old is when that original milk incident happened. And then years later, I was at my desk and I was playing with a rubber washer. And when I was playing with the washer, I put my thumb inside the washer and I tried bending it just as a nervous habit. And I realized that the washer was sticking to the table. And I realized if I took my finger even slightly out of the center, that it would release without any resistance. And
So thus, there was the connection point, the connection that leads to this awesome insight. Ah, this links back to my problem with the unspillable cup, and so he mentions patents. So here we take a slight diversion. Every engineer should know the fundamentals of patents. So if a faculty member so desires, this would be a great spot to spend, a minute or two on the fundamentals of intellectual property. Then we might even want to go look up Harry's patents and, see what his claims are, for example. Another point that Harry makes is that, to really create value, the idea can't just be on a patent, in a database somewhere. It's got to be commercialized. So in his definition, innovation, to be an innovation, it's got to be invention plus commercialization. So some good learning there. So he tries and tries and tries to get this commercialized, and it's not successful. So he finally connects with Jamie Smaldone, who's already, he's a business guy. He's in the space. He's a father-son team. They're in the consumer products. For those of you that know the Farberware brand, it's a 100-year-old brand with lots of brand recognition in the kitchenware space. And when he can't find a brand that has that super good brand recognition, he's looking for amazing products. So he tells a story about how he connected, and when he found this product, he had the same reaction as the guy in the YouTube video. So he connects, and he sees himself as a dot connector. So he connects people, and he makes all these. So that's what business people are often really good at, and marketing folks are connecting those dots and making those types of connections. He's got a really interesting, as soon as they put the Mighty Mug on the market, that people started knocking him off, like direct violations of intellectual property. So he's got some really keen insights into how to deal with this situation, which is real world. I have an invention myself, and it gets knocked off right around the edges of my intellectual property, but he dealt with it much, much better than I ever have. So some real good learnings there. So another really cool exercise when you put your value creation hat on is, so you've got this, and you could just focus on the Mighty Mug forever. But when you've got something like this, you need to think, how can I branch out? What other potential applications could there be for this smart grip technology, as Harry calls it? So you could cut your class loose for a little bit and thinking about and brainstorming and using other ideation techniques on what are some of the potential applications here. Then there's in these cases, there's always some really cool life lessons. And this one is probably worth listening to.
Creating value is by far the most important component if you want to be a success. The other thing I'm going to tell you is a lot of people don't understand that it doesn't matter. What really makes you a success is not the product or the design. It's the perseverance and the business acumen and the having a good marketing and a good system to get it out there. I've seen great inventions that never make it anywhere, and I see things like pet rocks that really shouldn't know the light of day, but yet they become very, very successful, because I think the most important component is perseverance. If you persevere.
Right. So, and then Jamie has some great advice about, you don't have to do everything. If you have this great idea, don't keep it in a bag. Don't try to do everything yourself, because you need to connect with people. And somewhere in this case, he gives the example of, one extension of his Mighty Mug idea is to use it for baby mugs, because kids love to pick up, even though it's a sippy cup, they love to pick them up and throw them. Maybe it's just to irritate mom and dad, but they love to do that. So if you have an unspillable one, at least they can't knock it off their high chair or whatever. So he wanted to get it branded with Disney, but rather than try to go through that as a small company, he went out and connected with a company that already has the rights to Disney, and he's off and running. So some great words of wisdom there. Question, Jim?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. We're just about through this case. Sorry. And of course, there's some good, solid engineering here. So we have the Mighty Mug, we can challenge our students to do a free body diagram, and then we can challenge them in a homework assignment to figure out how much force calculated does it take to knock over a Mighty Mug. And so they can go do that assignment. You could even actually take it to a lab and figure out how much force in actuality it takes to knock it over, and figure out how much force it takes on a given surface versus other surfaces. And then you could have a really good discussion about calculation versus actual, and so on. Any questions about that case, or any thoughts about the case from anyone? Or Jonathan, anything else you'd like to chime in? Don't be shy.
I have a question.
Please.
Okay. I really like how you laid out the case study in terms of the different steps and how you walk through that. Do you have like a formula or, the basic pieces of a case study that you like to put that, follow, or at least have somewhere to start?
I'll give a brief answer, and then I'm going to ask Jonathan to chime in. My brief answer is that formula is in Jonathan's head. He's brilliant at this. We do like a 1 hour interview with the stars of the story. And then Jonathan lays out a series of questions that logically take us through this compelling story from kind of inception through the end result. And it results in this beautiful storyline of curiosity, connections, and value creation. So what we're going to codify that, but I'll turn that question over to Jonathan, Heather.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. I think Ken summarized it pretty well. What I do is in that initial discussion where we're just talking to them to learn about their product, try to understand where the interesting meat is that would make for a great follow-on interview with recording, that becomes the ultimate case. And then, as Ken mentioned, go back and prepare kind of an outline. And I'm always thinking about telling the whole story. So there's really two sides to the story. One is the product development process story, which is, problem recognition, opportunity recognition, translation of that to a problem statement, from that generation of concepts and selection of which one they're going to build. From that, how they, either test, refine, test it in the market, depends what they did, how they get moved from there into production, what funding is necessary along the way. And, is it angel, is it private, is it, do they work for a company and it's just internal, all those sort of questions. And then overlaying on top of that, as Ken said, are the 3 C's. You're constantly looking for those takeoffs that make it tie in naturally to the entrepreneurial mindset. Just by virtue of the fact that they've taken the product to market and created value, it's all, the pieces are there. You're just looking to pull those pieces out as you interview and create the story. So then we typically record that, typically an hour, another, recorded video. And then it's just a matter of video production, slicing it up nicely, trying to keep the clips to a minute or 2 or 3 at the most, trying to tell a story and kind of the overall flow of the slides.
Great question, Heather.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in first with a comment and second with a question. First, this really resonates with me, this case study in particular. I teach mechanical engineering, and just what you talked about is awesome. And that's exactly what students need to hear. Really, really cool. So nice work on this one in particular. And if you have other ones like this, I'd love to see them too. The one thing, my question was, some of the things that students most need to hear are actually from failures. And nobody, this is a human problem. Nobody likes to report on their failures and talk about it and celebrate them. It's hard emotionally and just in every way. So I'm just wondering, have you been able to find case studies where you were able to celebrate failures and talk about them and talk about the lessons learned versus only successes? Because I feel like successes are easier to capture.
I can take that if you want, Ken.
Please.
Okay, so first of all, classic engineering failure cases. Hyatt Regency collapse, Tacoma Narrows, dam failures, train derailments, train collisions, you name it. I believe that engineering failure case studies are a dime a dozen. And what they don't bring to you is this entrepreneurial mindset spirit. almost all of those fail because, we didn't understand wind impact on a bridge. We didn't understand the design change that was made in the support structures of the walkway at the Hyatt Regency, and it collapsed when a lot of people were out there, et cetera, et cetera. So those are a dime a dozen, and we're not interested in creating more just categorical engineering failure case studies. That being said, behind every successful entrepreneur that's at the heart of every single one of these case studies are failures. And so we typically ask them about this, or they bring it up. This wasn't just the first time I tried to do something and I magically created the Mighty Mug. I did this and it didn't work. I did that and I got a patent, but nobody wanted it, blah, blah, blah. So some of that's embedded in all of these case studies. The amount of that depends on the intrigue of the personal story. So the other thing to remember is these are designed to be, and I think Ken will get to this later, but these are designed to be a collective part of the curriculum. In other words, the mechanical engineer will take a fluid mechanics study where they learn about fluid forces and how you can create value from dispensing beer faster. They'll take this case study and learn about, statics, free body diagram, tipping equation, whatever. You'll take something about heat transfer and learn, something about keeping a diesel emission fluid from freezing. You'll take another case study and learn something else. So in addition to learning a different technical subject, each one also tends to have a different focus in terms of EM mindset. One might make more sense to drill more into the intellectual property. One might make more sense to dig more into the capital and fundraising. One might make more sense to get into the partnerships and strategic partnerships and distribution. So collectively, all the pieces are there, but no one particular case, goes super deep in any one of those areas, if that makes any sense at all. So.
Yep. Thank you, Jonathan. All right. Let's get through a little farther here. So I'm going to just show you two other cases. So here's one: students love anything to do with beer, and MIT did a senior design project with Budweiser, and it was, you have these big men typically that are lugging kegs of beer downstairs into bars and whatnot. And so Budweiser came and said, hey, we want to help these guys. Can you design something? And so the senior design team came up with something. It was pretty crude, but it was interesting. And so later a team of MIT graduates got together and said, let's really do this for real. And so they worked, and the really cool thing about this story is they really got to know their customer. So these MIT guys rode in these trucks in the middle of the night for hundreds of hours and really got to know their customer and really understand the environments in which this thing was going to be used. So they created the Glide, and it's again, cool story, lots of wins and great lessons learned here. Another one was this Project Reach. This is the one where the supply and the time frame in particular. There's a nuclear disaster, a half-mile underground in a salt mine in Pennsylvania where radioactive stuff is leaking out into the atmosphere. So they needed something really quick to get in a very confined space, to get a 25-pound camera 100 feet back in a very confined space. And so in just 5 weeks, they had to build this really interesting boom that you can see here. So this is a deflection calculation, a beam deflection calculation, and all kinds of interesting lessons learned along the way. So where we're at right now, so we really need help finding great stories, the ones that will really get people's attention. So what we would like to do is offer a $1,000 finder's fee to anyone who can really help broker a relationship for us. I mean, we'll do the work that it takes to build the case, make the case, do the videos and all that. But we need the ideas, and then folks that can help, build the bridge to the inventor or whomever, whatever it might be. That last one, by the way, wasn't an inventor. That was with a very entrepreneurially minded company, Cornerstone Research Group. But first, we need to see what makes a great case study story. So here are some fundamentals, and this is my last slide, and then we're going to have a dialogue here in our last 20 minutes. So we really want things that engage students. So the subject or the story must be relevant, exciting, or intriguing to our undergraduate engineering students, right? So the Mighty Mug is interesting. As we know from the turbo tap, things relating to beer, the turbo tap is a fluid dynamics one that Jonathan came up with. And, nuclear disaster, a half-mile underground salt mine seems to work pretty well too, sorry. We want things where the 3 C's, are pretty evident. So we want to pique that curiosity right in the beginning. Obviously there needs to be some technical engineering content, and we would like these to fit into, a core course or a required course in the curriculum rather than, an elective course, because we put a lot of effort into making these cases really, really good. And, it's important. We haven't been able to deal with a lot of big corporations because, there's so many constraints on sharing story, on sharing information. I don't mean to disparage that, because surely there are some that will share information, but that's been a challenge for us so far. So we have to make sure that whoever the individuals are in the company or whatever, that this information can be shared. And we would love to get some stories, from women entrepreneurs or inventors or engineers, and other underrepresented groups would be awesome.